Donald Trump's decision to put an end to the United States military operation against the Islamic State, its group in Syria, has left many observers wondering what might happen to Washington's main partners on the ground, the Kurds, and whether their enemy Turkey offered the president anything in return. Mr. Trump's announcement on Wednesday that the 2,000 United States troops, deployed largely in northeastern Syria, would begin withdrawing immediately was a gift to Turkey, and also to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, by supporting the alliance of Kurdish and Arab militias, or as the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF. Washington gained indirect control of half of Syria's strategic resources, including many oil fields and much of its most fertile agricultural land, and leverage in discussions with Mr. Assad and his allies Russia and Iran on the country's future. Now the SDF is backed into a corner, and the Kurdish militia that dominates the alliance, the People's Protection Units, faces two probable scenarios. Anchored Safety is an extension of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, which is banned in Turkey, and has fought for Kurdish autonomy there since 1984, and considers it a terrorist organization. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan declared last week that the Turkish military was gearing up for a ground incursion into SDF-controlled territory east of the river Euphrates. The Pentagon responded by warning that such unilateral action would be unacceptable. But on Monday, Mr. Erdogan said he had discussed his plan with Mr. Trump by telephone and that he had given a positive response. When the Turkish military and allied Syrian rebel fighters launched a ground offensive to capture the majority Kurdish Afrin region almost a year ago, the exact 2 months before deciding to withdraw to the safety of areas where United States troops were based. This time the Syrian Kurds have nowhere else to go. The SDF controls 30% of Syria and has more than 60,000 fighters under its command. But without the threat of the United States intervening, Mr. Erdogan would be confident that Turkish troops could drive them back away from the border. The Turkish military's air power would give it a huge advantage in a battle with the Kurds, as was seen in Afrin. It would also have at its disposal at least 15,000 Syrian rebels stationed west of the Euphrates, in Afrin, and other border towns. Mr. Erdogan might also believe that Arab militias in the SDF could be persuaded not to get involved in a Turkish-Kurdish conflict, and to abandon the alliance. The second scenario would see the SDF try to cut a deal with the Syrian government. Mr. Assad, whose forces lack the military power to capture the SDF's territory by themselves, might in the end decide that the Kurdish-led alliance poses less of a threat than a long-term Turkish presence in northern Syria. The SDF has always been open to negotiating with the Syrian government. Representatives met officials in Damascus at least twice earlier this year. Although the talks did not lead to any significant openings, that change in the government's attitude is only likely to happen amid a breakdown in relations between Russia, Iran and Turkey, who have been working together to stabilize Syria and find a political solution to the country's civil war. The United States withdrawal from Syria might weaken Russian and Iranian willingness to go along with Turkey's plans. Moscow's anti-Kurdish and pro-Turkish stance largely stems from the attempts to deprive the United States of local allies, and to drive a wedge between the NATO powers. United States support for the SDF made the Kurds and their allies into one of the major forces in Syria. However, it also left them with powerful enemies. It was the Washington's announcement in December 2017 that it would help the SDF develop a 30,000 strong border force in eastern Syria that led to Russia allowing the Turkish military to attack Afrin. More recently, repeated statements from the Trump administration that the United States had decided to stay in Syria until Iranian forces left prompted Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to level accusations of separatism against the Kurds and their allies. If the United States is out of the picture, Moscow might no longer feel that it needs to hold back on efforts to curb Kurdish influence in eastern Syria. The question of whether Turkey might have offered something in return for the United States withdrawal would be relevant to Russia's future position as well. The State Department's decision to approve selling the Patriot missile defense system to Turkey, which came on the same day as the withdrawal announcement, suggests that there might have been some coordination between Washington and Ankara. However, it is unlikely that Mr. Erdogan would cut off all relations with Russia and also come on board with Mr. Trump's anti-Iran policies anytime soon. Two Scandinavian women tourists have been found dead in Morocco with cords to their necks, the country's interior ministry said. Both bodies were found near the town of Imleo in the High Atlas mountain range, near the foot of North Africa's highest peak, Mount Tepco. The women, from Denmark and Norway respectively, have not yet been named. A police investigation has been launched into their deaths, the Interior Ministry statement said. A popular tourist attraction has become the latest Chinese company to show solidarity with Huawei's chief finance officer, Meng Wanzhou, who was arrested in Canada on 1 December. Shannon Mountain Scenic Park, in eastern Hainan province said it would waive the $9.65 ticket fee for anyone carrying a Huawei phone. Ms. Meng, who was given bail in Canada, faces extradition to the United States on charges of breaking Iran sanctions. Her case has upped tensions with China. Use Huawei phones. Shoot grand photos on the mountain. A notice on the Shannon Park's social media account said, "We wish friends around the world who support Huawei's success and bliss." The offer would last until 29 December, the South China Morning Post reported. But it was met with some criticism among China's social media users, who claimed it was discriminatory. Huawei phone owners are being offered other enticements too. They can get a 20% discount at a border in Beijing. Seen in Beijing, bring a Huawei phone and get 20% off. Similar to this story we covered yesterday, https://QXL19YPQLPIC. Twitter.com Sokolov. End of Twitter post by @LuOceanG. At least one firm has threatened to penalize anyone buying Apple products. A few days ago, Manpad Shenzhen-based LED and display manufacturer offered subsidies to any employees buying Huawei phones. It also pledged to fine anyone who bought an Apple iPhone. United States prosecutors alleged Ms. Meng, 46, used a Huawei subsidiary called Skycom to evade sanctions on Iran between 2009 and 2014. They also alleged she publicly misrepresented Skycom as being a separate company from Huawei, and that she deceived banks about the true relationship between the two companies. Ms. Meng, who is the daughter of Huawei's founder, has denied any wrongdoing and said she will contest the allegations. Life of Huawei's high-flying heiress. The United States has been investigating the Chinese telecoms giant, the world's second-largest smartphone maker, since 2016, believing that it used Skycom to bring United States manufacturing equipment and millions of dollars in transactions to Iran in violation of sanctions. Ms. Man's detention comes amid an increasingly acrimonious trade dispute between Washington and Beijing. China is angry at her detention, saying she has not violated any laws. Beijing has threatened severe consequences unless Canada releases the executive. Since her arrest, 2 Canadians, a former diplomat and a businessman, have been detained in China on suspicion of harming national security. United States President Donald Trump said last week that he might intervene in the United States Justice Department's case against Ms. Mann if it would serve national security interests. I'll help achieve a trade deal with China if I think it's good for what will be certainly the largest trade deal ever made, which is a very important thing. What's good for national security?